All right. At 6:30 PM on May the 4th be with you. I will call this meeting to order.
Long and prosper.
Live long and prosper. Different.
Exactly.
Oh, sorry, you're waiting for me to do roll call.
Brandy, will you do roll call, please? Thank you.
You do have an agenda today, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Roll call. Council Liaison Nordby.
Here.
Commissioner Rathi.
Here.
Or Rathi?
Rathi.
Rathi, sorry. Commissioner Muick.
Present.
Commissioner Brenna.
Here.
Commissioner Weiss.
Here.
And Chair Blees.
Here.
And also present is me, the Community Development Director, Brandy Howe.
Excellent. We have an agenda in our hands. Is there any comment or changes anybody desires to seek for the agenda?
Nope. I have none.
With that, I would take a motion to adopt the agenda.
I'll make a motion to adopt.
And a second. So that's a motion by Brenna, and a second by Rathi. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Good. We are good with the agenda. Meeting minutes from, what was it, April the 6th, I believe?
Mm-hmm.
I have one very minor grammatical comment on item 7, page 2, page 2? Page 2, yes. Page 2, item 7, second paragraph begins, in the middle of the paragraph says they also discuss potential impacts. I think between the word impacts and property, we need to put a comma or the word on. Randy, can you look at that and see what you think that should be?
On, yep.
On, yeah, okay. Just to make it a meaningful sentence. That was the only thing I had. Are there any other comments on the meeting minutes? Nope. No other comments? Motion to adopt and approve meeting minutes from the April meeting
I'll move to adopt meeting minutes.
by Commissioner Weiss. Second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Muick. All in favor? Say
Aye.
Aye. We are good with approval of meeting minutes. Don't mind me, I'm fiddling with my computer. With that, the meeting is open to the public. For anyone from the public who wants to speak on topics other than what's on the agenda. I believe we have an individual here. Are you interested, sir? Yes, I am.
John Schmall, 2750 Chisholm Avenue.
Welcome, John.
Thank you. Commissioners, I guess, anyway. Because of something that Councilmember Nordby said at the end of the meeting, council meeting, I was moved to come here this evening because it seems that you'll be taking up a subject of multiple zoning things to get them in compliance with the comprehensive plan. So it isn't just one item where you can park your car or something along that line. And my reason for being here is to give you ask you to be very careful in doing this to see that it might affect people negatively. Because I had the experience about 6 years ago sitting in the council chamber when the complete revision of the zoning code was taken up, en masse. And this was the end product, and the council was going to vote on it. And, not having time to spend at council meetings and planning commission meetings and whatnot, I took a look at it, the finished product, and went, oh my God. And what had happened is that they took the wording of the DNR when it came to setbacks from bodies of water. And it so happened that what was 75 feet the DNR has 75 feet on normal lakes, 150 feet on natural environment lakes. And we have a natural environment lake. I happen to live on it. It's called Casey Sewer, Storm Sewer Water Containment Area is what I refer to it as, not a lake. CSSWCA, not BWCAW, which we know about. But anyway, what that did was to take the setback from wherever the shoreline is from that body of water over the top of my house and put it about 20 feet into my front yard. And you don't want that if you're a homeowner, because that means whatever you have is as a footprint, that's it, unless you want to spend a lot of money that in getting a variance. So seeing that, I brought it up, but I was only one person. And usually with one person, you could come in here and say there's an asteroid coming down, and you're only one person. They would say, it's not true. But if you get more than one, so that required me to get the neighbors together to say, hey, what's going on? And it turned out that there was only 8 of us, and somebody could have said, I think we're going to affect some people out there in this, and you could have contacted 8 people, because there was no sympathy given to me about that. Hey, we posted these things. I mean, I've lived this. We posted these things. You should have been aware of it. Have a nice day. Well, that required me to get the neighbors together, the en masse come here, which they then started to deal with the DNR, and the DNR, Mr. Petrie, who was the guy who enforces this stuff, said, well, if they would have asked us, our intent was never to have something affect a piece of property that was already in existence. And so our code now is back to 75 feet. And if I so desire to add on to the back of my house next to the shoreline, I can do it for about 20 feet and without having to plead with the student group here in whether I should be able to do that or not. So the main point that I have here this evening is that I have no idea what effects your process will be. But keep in mind, please, that there could be some negative effects, and to think about those, and if there are, to let people or property owners know that this is coming down the pike, and you might want to deal with this situation and appear, plead your case before it becomes at the level of going to the council. So that's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you, John.
Thanks, John.
I appreciate your involvement. I will also share with you that at our last meeting, we specifically talked about that very topic. And is this a positive effect, a negative effect? Should people have a say in how we deal with this? If we choose to do what we're talking about doing, which as of right now, we're very interested in getting adjacent property owners of properties that might be impacted. There would be an influence. So I think we're really going to be very careful about how we approach it and try and get a lot of input, because there's not an urgency about it, but it's important that we address it. So that's sort of where we're at. But we have had the very discussion that you brought up.
Kind of like when people ask for a variance, you get the property owners on either side of you to say yes or no.
Yeah, and we want people to know what's going on. There's nothing, we have no intention of doing anything in secret on this topic, that's for sure.
Well, it wasn't done in secret
Yeah,
previously,
but people have to know
yeah.
too, and you need to make some effort, because you can stick it in a newsletter, but if the newsletter's not distributed in front of your face,
And you can say you had the opportunity to watch the meeting and see what was going on, and there probably might be 2 people that are online at this time doing it, because I think there might be 4 at council meetings or somewhere that online. It's a sad state of affairs that individuals can't have the time or don't have the time to listen to what's going on or read what is going to be.
I'm glad you do.
Well,
Thanks, John.
I try to do that, and then
Yeah.
I'm getting burned out, but that's another case. So anyway, it's good to hear that you had this in mind already.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, John.
Item 6, we have no public hearings scheduled for tonight, so we are up to item 7, commission business, which is the zoning map amendment discussion. Next steps. Brandy, would you like to take that?
Sure. Actually, I'd like to just kind of pull up the staff report and put it on the screen for
That'd be
everybody.
great.
And I thought we could just take them one by one. And also, I put a copy of the official zoning map in front of everybody so that you could have that to look at too, to see the broader context, instead of having to flip between various screens. And we only got through about half, maybe a third of the properties that are different from the future land use map, just because of the volume of
Yeah.
properties to look at and other, work that has been coming up into the department lately. So I think that we'll continue to revisit this topic and have them continue to trickle in as we have the ability to review them. But we'll start with area number 1 on the map, which is around Casey Lake. Not exactly Chisholm Avenue, but along a county road, what is that, C?
Yeah, it's County C,
Okay, oh, 17th Avenue, sorry.
Yep.
That must be County
west of Diane Street.
Yep, and it looks, I think it's adjacent to White Bear Avenue.
Well, it isn't all the way to White Bear because it's
Oh, right,
the,
to the end of the city is not quite to White Bear.
the school property is there.
Okay,
west of
so what we see on screen, let me if I can make it a little bigger. We have 3 parcels in this location, and they are currently zoned single-family. The future land use map proposes medium density. All combined, we have almost 7 acres. The property is completely covered by the shoreline overlay zoning district, and that lake encroaches into all 3 of them by a significant portion, and they lie within the FEMA floodplain.
Does the entire property lie within a floodplain? Or just a portion?
Yes, it does. Let me scroll down here. So can you see the floodplain is, oh, that's a shoreline
That's-
overlay. I'm sorry,
that's
the
the
floodplain is on the right. So we've got the 100 in the blue and the 500 year in the purple. So not everything is in the floodplain, but a good portion of those properties are.
How much of that property is, because it looks like almost half of it, respectively, is water?
How much? I didn't measure that, but I'd say, yeah, it's probably about,
Half,
yeah.
nearly half.
Yeah, just looking at from a size perspective of what is the footprint that would be potentially buildable in different.
They're deep lots.
Yep.
Especially the one on the west.
So all 3 properties meet the minimum lot width and area requirements for all 3 of the residential districts. The proposed medium-density zoning surprisingly is okay for the site, so long as any future development complies with those standards for the shoreland, the floodplain, and the watershed district. So rezoning isn't necessarily required here for conformity with the zoning ordinance, but if we wanted to make it conform to the future land use plan, we could. We could increase the density here to allow for maybe some townhomes or something.
But this area would be influenced by what Mr. Smalls was speaking of, which
Right.
is the 75-foot setback. Do you have by any chance, a line that would show where that is?
I think it's set back from the ordinary high water mark, but maybe I have that wrong. Let's pull up
Yeah,
the zoning code.
75 feet from ordinary high water mark would make sense.
Yep, so,
It's not the overlay. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about setback.
correct. So I believe, 75 feet is probably, there's plenty of land.
Yeah, there's plenty of land to still develop.
So any thoughts or comments on area 1? Or do you want to just kind of go through them?
Let's just go through them.
Okay.
I mean, unless there's something specific somebody wants to bring up.
So if I had to vote for area 1, I don't know. I think in general, I kind of lean towards don't rock the boat if I'm going to put myself out there as having an opinion on this. Yeah, I think unless there is an active redevelopment project or we have landowners that are very interested in moving towards higher density, I generally tend to tread lightly on rezoning.
And you were saying that that was sort of what you've seen in your past life experience is.
Yeah, I don't have a ton of experience with it, but I do know that, kind of like Mr. Schmall has mentioned, if you start talking about property changes to people's property, they have a little bit of a kind of a instinct to get a little concerned.
And I'm kind of interested, what if I asked this guy who lives on this piece of property if they were interested in doing this? I mean, I have an interest in knowing how people feel about it.
Yeah, I think that's a valid point, kind of going back to what we had talked about the last meeting where maybe after going through this exercise, we choose the properties that it might make sense and then reach out directly to them.
Because at the same time, you could look at it and say, well, I, as a property owner, I have no interest in seeing that happen.
But I, as a property owner, might benefit.
If the property owner knew, if you were the property owner and you knew that future land use is this potential development, now in my mind, when I decide to sell the property, I might have a different perspective on it.
Correct, yep.
Sell it to a different kind of an owner who wants to develop it, and you're potentially getting a better deal on your piece of property.
Yep, I agree.
So
It's, yeah,
So to inform the constituency, if you will, that this comp plan is out there, this land use plan is out there, and to inform those owners that, hey, if you weren't paying attention before, you should know this,
right.
that kind of a thing.
Good
I guess
point.
is the way I'm looking at it.
I think you're right. It's definitely two different approaches. Both have merit. So let's go on to Area 2. Cardinal Gardens, which is along 17th Avenue and Spirit Drive, or in the vicinity of Spirit Drive. So this area is condo plat that was approved as a cluster housing development in 2007. It was approved under the old zoning code as an R1A zoning district. And under today's zoning ordinance, this would likely be considered a quote-unquote cottage development, which is allowed in the R2 and R3 districts, but not in the R1. So rezoning it to R2 would bring it into conformance, but it was approved with a PUD, so it's not required to bring it into conformance. So this is another situation. Well, this is a different situation. Rezoning them is just with the ordinance and with the comp plan. This isn't really a development site possibility, just because it's already kind of built out to its potential.
So are those multi-tenant units that are there on that cul-de-sac today?
Multi-tenant, there's,
Two living units, right, in each of those?
yes, it's two families, so there's 6 units in the four buildings. I don't know what that,
The one on the east, I don't know if that's two or if that's a single family.
that's a one unit.
That one's one unit.
So it must be a house and then 3 duplexes.
Got it.
What was the old R1A? Is that roughly comparable to an R1 or 2 or 3 now?
I don't think I can answer that. I looked it up at the time that I wrote the memo. Because it's an R1, it makes me think that it's probably one of the lower density. I don't know if there was an R1A and an R1B back in the day. If there was, usually A would be the lower density.
Sure.
I would lean, my opinion is, just Sharon, looking at it, since those are already duplexes, I have no problems in shifting this one. I don't think there's a significant impact in any capacity, just an observation.
Do it or not do it, as far as the rezoning is concerned. That's kind of what it feels like to me.
Yep,
Doesn't matter that much, but
okay.
Okay.
So, still no decision on anything yet. Okay, so keep on trucking. Got it.
keep on track.
Area 3, I think this one's similar to Area 2. Oh, I made a typo in here. I have Area 4. I was switching them around. This is a little bit more than a half acre, and it contains 7 dwelling units at a density of 11 dwelling units per acre. The maximum density in the R2 is 12. So rezoning to this R2 would bring the property into conformity with the zoning ordinance. But again, it was developed as a PUD, approved as a PUD plat, so we don't have to do the rezoning here either. But we could. Okay. Area 4, Delaware Avenue and 17th. Delaware is on the east side here, or sorry, west side. This panhandle-shaped piece of property is owned by the city, and then the rest of these are single-family lots. The total area is 3.7 acres, and the city-owned property is 2.5. The 6 single-family lots, they all have adequate lot area for R1 and R2 zoning, so if any of them wanted to redevelop, they could potentially, but kind of the way all of those are laid out, they'd have to be tear downs to put up a duplex probably. The city-owned site has redevelopment potential. We've actually had three different inquiries to get that site developed, and we put out a kind of a call for proposals from those 3 individuals on those. It is the site of a former church, and the city purchased it in 2010. It was approved at that point in time, or actually around 2020, for 12 dwelling units. I have a picture of the plat down here. This was the plat that was approved. So it's kind of high density, and then there would be like a stormwater outlot here on the east side. So this could be a candidate for upgrade to zone.
Is it R1 now, you said?
Yep, it's R1 now. So some options here to think about. Rezoning it would give benefit out the gate to any of the developers that maybe want to do high density here, which I'm assuming they would want to in order to, make it work financially. Forcing it to be a PUD, though, it gives more control to the city in terms of design of those properties. If this was not owned by the city in the first place, that would be one mechanism to make sure that we get the kind of development or platting that we want.
If we left it at R1, it would have to go the PUD route.
If we left it at the R1, they could either request a rezoning for higher density, or they could request the planned unit development.
Any idea how old the homes are that would have to be taken out if this were to be redeveloped?
They're not really old homes. I mean, they're probably 70s vintage.
Yeah, I would imagine that, they're about 70s. But just to be clear, those 6 houses, in order for this site to be redeveloped, this 2.5 acres, those are not affected. That's just if they themselves wanted to tear their own houses down.
If they wanted to sell to a developer who wanted to take the whole thing.
Mm-hmm. I don't foresee anything like that happening. So thoughts on this one?
What's the downside to allowing this?
To allowing
Rezoning?
rezoning? Just the potential loss of the ability to have some design control.
No, I guess I lean more towards going the PUD route if that allows the city a little bit more design control. If nothing else, there could be some new style of development that hasn't been tried in this area that the city might want to recommend, or might want to maybe even lean away from. I know, for example, when I lived in Dallas, there were a lot of small bungalow lots down there that were rezoned, and developers came in and tore out the bungalows there and then put 3-level condos going back on the lot, so that you were squeezing in like 6 condos that had garages on their lower floor. And frankly, and this is my own personal opinion, I thought they looked like crap, and they didn't give anybody any space at all. So I'm not saying that the city would want to discourage that. I'm just saying that there may be types of development the city wants to discourage, and if we have the ability to do that with the PUD as opposed to just an overall zoning recode, I'd be in favor of that, considering especially the kind of the oddball nature of the size of the land.
Yeah, that coupled with, I guess, the downside you say of losing a little bit of design control, I guess I'm not hearing a strong upside to making this change now, aside from obviously being in conformance with the comprehensive plan.
I think the upside would be from developer-friendly approach, just to have it kind of site-ready for somebody to come in and just take away that obstacle. So that's one upside. Because it is a process. It does take, it could take months, and that could take up a good deal of the summer. Well, let's put a pin in that, and we'll come back around. Okay. Area 5, this one is on 7th Street. It includes the relatively new 7th Street townhome site, as well as a equal-sized site that is currently occupied by one single-family home. So that site is 3.5 acres on the north. So this is kind of like Area 1 on the lake, where we could try to proactively rezone it, but I would advise that we talk to them to see what their interest level is in that.
Yeah, they were very active neighbors when that other project was put in front of this.
In opposition to? Okay.
Yeah.
On the south side, no, is it on the south side? So what is that ecology center with the?
Yeah, west of the Ecology Center, right?
Yep.
So that one is, it's just north of B
Yes.
and 7th?
Yep.
So it's actually, it's this one and that one, right?
Yep.
Yeah. The cul-de-sac.
Oh, wait, no. It actually is these two.
That one.
This one's got this, the
Little
cul-de-sac.
cul-de-sac on the south
Yeah,
and the
but
big
that's new.
green space,
This one is,
2242.
Oh, I gotcha.
so
Was even having problems, right?
this is,
So has property, so if I look at the big map, the printout one, 2242, I believe that's the number. Again, my glasses, small print.
I can't see it at all. Is it the north one or the south one?
The south one.
Okay.
And,
just built
and
those.
then what I'm looking at on screen, looks like there's a difference on that property. One's built out to have a cul-de-sac.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
So the map that you're looking at doesn't have the plat lines drawn yet, because this is probably from 2015. And that plat happened, I don't know, 2021?
so all those, almost all those houses are built already.
Can you move
yeah, I
the
think
screen
they're
down just a little
half
bit? Thanks.
I don't know if
Okay.
today's.
All right, that helps locate it.
Yeah, so this one I'd recommend, if we're gonna do anything, we talk to the current owner of the single-family house. The other one, the lot to the south, or the multiple lots, was approved as a PUD, and it complies regardless. So moving on. Oh, sorry.
So what was your recommendation on this one?
If we're gonna do anything, we should talk to the owner of the property to the north. Area 6, where is this one? Okay, so this one is on the southeast side on Park Row. So if you're looking at the map, the zoning map, there are some pink boxes on the south side of town, on the right side of the,
South right?
yeah. So, and then there's some yellow boxes, some R2 boxes, I believe. And then these three are just under the R2 boxes.
So are these properties 2047, 2061, and 2069?
Yes, they should be. Can you see that with your glasses?
Yeah,
Those are amazing glasses.
barely, right?
They're only 1.25s.
I need to get some of those.
I did just get my eyes checked.
My head hurt to look down there. Okay. So this area, okay, so this one was 3 single-family houses. This is when I was a little perplexed by why it was chosen for rezoning. Because if you look at these houses on Street View, they look fine. There's nothing that indicates that they need to be redeveloped. So if you were to put all of those lots together, they equal about an acre, and they all have widths of greater than 90 feet, which I guess must have significance to the R2 district. I wonder what I meant by that. Let's look at the R2 district. When you do these reports, it all makes sense when you're writing it.
In there.
Yeah, I understand that.
90 feet wide. Okay, 50 feet is the minimum lot width, so it works for both R1 and R2. So they're big lots, but not necessarily wide enough to subdivide individually.
Randy, is there benefit, you know the meeting you and I were at for Oakdale, about 120?
Uh-huh.
Is there benefit to taking action on this property before they decide what they're doing?
That's a factor to consider, yeah. If Oakdale, I'm sorry, not Oakdale, if the sorry, it's been a really long day. If the state DOT in their reimagining of Highway 120 need to acquire additional right-of-way, that can significantly impact the future of these properties and all along Highway 120. So as we kind of think about some of these other properties, put that in the back of your head. So I say in the report, okay, the properties along division to the north of these are zoned R2, okay? And they're 2-family.
With this land use map, is it showing that that this area 6 would be converted to R2?
Yeah, I think what
So it
I'm,
would match what's north of it.
yep, well, yep. But what's north of it is like, if you can see, like right here, and then on this side along Park Row, so from here up, those are actual duplexes, or twin homes rather, because of the property ownership. Other than the fact that these are a little bit bigger than their counterparts, I don't see any reason to actively rezone these. I don't know why they were called out on the future land use map.
Aside from the fact that they're on 120 and they're matching the zoning of the area just immediately north.
Correct, yep.
So it's extending the R2 zone further south is all that's happening there.
Yep.
So,
This is really
then even further south, though, it's still also R1.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
it's, you gotta draw a line somewhere, right? And
Yep.
I don't know, I would,
I don't know why these to the Park Row behind them. I mean, those didn't get picked up for,
Yeah, the other question I would have would be if we're trying to achieve a consistency in zoning, why wouldn't we go ahead and take the properties immediately to the south? Because that area is bracketed by R2s. You know, you've got the R2s to the north, and then about 8 properties south, you have another stretch of R2. So why wouldn't you just make everything along there an R2?
some of those frontages are on the cul-de-sac behind.
Yeah, but the area that's fronting, the properties that are fronting on 120, it would seem that was the logic of creating the land use map as it is now. And there's only one other property to the south that isn't fronting on Park Row.
Yeah.
1987?
Yeah, 1987 is the only other one. There,
It's even
yeah,
bigger.
there would be some logic in making that one, converting that one too.
Jason, you made mention of a conversation that you had that had taken place either with Oakdale or the 120 development. Is there any insights that you can share around that dialogue that might be helpful in considering this stretch?
Early in the planning stage, they put out 5 visions, and we're having people star what vision they like. But there's,
Early.
what's gonna happen, I believe, would be throwing darts at a dartboard right now as far as you took any of their visions. Not enough for us to have a meaningful conversation about what direction. To me, the only thing that would be meaningful is if, and I don't know enough about zoning laws, is if 3 of the vision boards, I believe 3 of the 5 had a significant amount of right-of-way access given away. If zoning it R2 now makes sense as a city, because once they take away that feet, it would be harder to zone it as R2 once they take it away. I don't know if that's an accurate statement or an inaccurate statement.
Because if they are going to widen 120 there, and you are going to lose, feet, as you had mentioned, does that even justify it becoming an R2 at that point, and because of the property size?
Now, there's also a desire to put a bike trail along Century, and one of the big problems with that is the way the properties along Century are zoned, in that there are, right now, a bike trail would have to stagger from one side of the highway to the other frequently.
Sure.
So if we take away that ability to try to put together a block for a bike trail, then that's going to make the job even harder.
So I guess in that context, does zoning it help move that needle, or does that detract from it? And how does,
I don't think zoning is going to have an impact on the highway project one way or the other. As far as that, from my understanding of where they are in their process, it is really high level at this point. So they're kind of looking at the suite of options in terms of how can this road be redeveloped from whatever the beginning is, like Highway 94, all the way to some highway north of 694, I think. County D. How can it be redesigned to accommodate the various users and traffic and volumes and the existing infrastructure that's along there? So they're gonna do basically a parcel by parcel deep dive and figure some of this stuff out. Like, where do all the driveways intersect with this road? Where do people put their garbage cans out on garbage day? Or where are the walkers going? Is there bike traffic, bus traffic? So that's outside of my area of expertise, but it's that level of detail that they're currently like deep diving into it right now. And also, as you can see on the screen, the right-of-way width varies all along the corridor. So like there's a blue line I just drew. The center line is offset based on where the property lines are. So right there at that point, it's about 80 feet, 81 feet. The typical highway right-of-way width is about 100 feet for something like this. So, but when you get up a little bit further, like here, I think you are pretty
Like it's
close.
About 100 feet there.
Yeah, so you're right on, or close to, So there's a lot of work that's gonna go into Highway 120 and figuring out what to do and where we're gonna have bike paths, if any bike paths. Hopefully we do have bike paths. But in terms of our conversation, I think that it may be premature to rezone people proactively without having conversations with them first. Maybe this would be a good opportunity to consolidate these 3 lots, dedicate some right-of-way here as part of this project as an overall, public benefit, give and take kind of a situation, and then
If we're going to do that, do we want to go ahead and include that one lot on the far south side that is also only accessed on Century? Just to make it conforming all the way through?
I would wanna, I believe, and I'm only about 40%, but because I've been in that area, I believe 1987 has an easement agreement with 2010, and that their driveway doesn't actually go to 120, it actually goes to that.
So they have a shared driveway.
Oh, yeah, that would make sense.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Yeah, that would be very
Don't
logical.
quote me as
Yeah.
fact, but I believe that to be the case.
Yeah.
As-
Yeah, I think in this case, my leaning would certainly be hold off. Let's see what they're gonna do with 120 before you start making any proactive changes, because you just you don't know what that's going to turn into at this point.
The only thing I will say counter to that, and I'm not proposing this, but just remember that these highway projects can be 10, 15, and 20 years
Oh,
down
yeah.
the road.
Absolutely.
Yeah, if they're still workshopping options and doing community engagement, I think they're years away from,
But, you know,
Realizing the
We were
vision.
told that about the intersection of 36 and Hadley some years back, that was 10, 20 years out, and they had a project going within a year.
got their funding, yeah.
You know, so, and I think 120 and 36 has the potential of turning into that too.
Sure.
Yeah, it definitely
Because
does.
it needs all kinds of attention.
They
And
get their
so,
funding for sure.
you just don't know exactly how it's gonna fly, and yes, you're absolutely right, it might be 20 years before they actually do anything of note, but if there's no meaningful reason to change it today, I'd tend to say, let's just sit there and wait it out.
I can't see any downsides to us just letting it sit there.
I would agree with that approach. And then your question about the potential rezoning in the middle, I would suggest along the lines of let it sit, but also that area wasn't slated in the comp plan, so let's leave that alone too. Okay, let me get back.
Best to let a sleeping dog lie sometimes.
I think so in this one. I think the rest of these are kind of all along 120 if memory serves, yeah.
They are, and they're individual lots, a lot of them.
So Jason, I just pulled up 1987 in Google Maps. It looks like that one does have a driveway that goes to 120.
Very good. You know how to use your tech. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Yeah, all the other ones are individual residences. A couple of them are paired.
Yeah, let's see here. I'm just gonna scroll through. That's it.
There's a couple of them that definitely, you know, looking at the three that we were talking about, 2047, 2061, and the third one, which I believe is
2069.
2069. The middle of those two has probably the tightest driveway to 120 in the three of them. The bottom one, if their driveway is all road facing, if they lose that, they're gonna lose their parking abilities for the most part, just by the way that lot is configured, which is 2047.
Actually, you know, I think there's one of those lots right now, I think has just been developed. If I remember right, there's been a house that I've been watching go up, and I think it's in that stretch.
I think you're right.
Yeah, so 2047, that one would be an interesting one to, once, because they don't have a lot of frontage by any stretch at all, whereas the others have a little bit of extra roadway to work with.
Well, let's keep going down the path. Okay, so up a little bit on Division Street, we've got one on First Avenue and one on Second Avenue East, and these are both single-family currently planned for R2, planned for medium density. They're both wide enough for a potential split. So, okay, so my scenario here is if rezoned, they could be split, the lots could be split, and they could be redeveloped with two twins. So you could have. It's so funny looking at these in such a small little box. It's hard to imagine. But I did, I did do the measurements to make sure that these,
They could be rezoned without, or they could be split without a.
right. Yeah. So, I mean, it's possible that they could have some benefit here. This,
At least one of those properties, if not, if it isn't for sale right now, it has been within the last month or two.
oh, interesting.
Because, you know, I drive up and down Division regularly, going down to like Menards and what have you, and there is a house that's kind of across from that apartment complex that's on the other side of Century that I think is just recently sold. And they've been taking down a number of trees on the lot and things like that, trying to update things, I guess.
So my take on these two parcels is there is some development potential if we were to rezone. I would recommend reaching out to them directly to see if they're interested in that. If so, public hearing notices to their neighbors would be something that, if not required, we should definitely do so that they're aware of potential future density here.
Well, and across the street, you've got the Century North Apartments in Oakdale. That's what's on the opposite side of the street. For frame of reference.
So high density is consistent with Oakdale side, but your neighbors immediately to your, in your vicinity may not be happy.
And looking at each one of those lots in that area, those are definitely larger in comparison.
It'd stick out quite a bit if we did go R2 with them. I mean, if everything around them, at least on the North St. Paul side, is R1, they just happen to be big R1 lots.
Yeah, it's not typical in planning situations to proactively do spot zoning. It's kind of discouraged.
Yeah, that's kind of the way it feels with all of these.
Okay.
I mean, the group, the cluster that we talked about, that was,
Oh, and the
that
one
was
up,
further south.
yep.
That's a maybe, but even that, I would say, until we have a better idea of maybe the direction they're going with 120, those aren't worth doing either, because it's just a couple of lots, 3 lots, 4
Well, and then also, if you look further up, on Century, about 3 blocks further north, you also have that happen again, where you've got 2 fairly large lots fronting on Century. So, you know, if you're gonna do it to the 2 lots lower on Century, why not do it to the 2 lots higher on Century?
Oh, yeah, I think that's area 8 here.
Right.
Okay.
8 and 9.
Okay,
Yeah, areas.
I'm jumping ahead, sorry.
And yeah, no, I think you've got it right, though. I mean, we've got 2 more pairs that are basically the same scenario.
Full disclosure, we're now talking about a property that is adjacent to mine property,
Oh,
to my property, yes.
You don't get a vote anyway.
Well, I know, but I don't want,
No, I
No.
understand, and we appreciate that knowledge.
So we can get firsthand insights.
Right.
and the weird thing about this property, and I invite you all to drive through, is we are very far below 120. So it would need to be taken into consideration.
or below 120?
This is, so your map shows 6th Avenue East going to 120, but it's not, it's a cul-de-sac.
Ah, yeah. I know what you're talking
Right,
about.
that's the one that's dropped down.
So we are,
Yeah.
that road is at least 2 of me below.
There's quite a bit of a grade.
So if you look on,
Oh, you're talking about topography.
yeah,
Okay, I'm sorry, I was really confused.
sorry,
Elevation.
elevation, yeah.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is not completely accurate, because you're right, there should be
That's
a
right.
cul-de-sac showing there rather than a through street.
What?
Otherwise, it would
Yeah.
be a heck of a grade for trying to get up to.
Yeah, sixth ends, and is a cul-de-sac.
Am I looking at the right piece of paper? What do we,
So go up, other way.
go down?
Yeah, I'm sorry, down. Okay, stop there.
Oh, here.
So the bottom of that red square,
Oh, here. That's a cul-de-sac. Oh, I see it. I see it now. Okay.
But it's not shown that way on the zoning map.
Oh, when did the cul-de-sac happen?
It is, Sixth Avenue East has never gone through to 120. But in all the maps,
Oh, it's just right of way.
right.
Yeah.
There is a, please help me with the word.
Significant grade?
Well, no, but also a drainage swale.
Yeah.
There's, my understanding is, the people that own 120 own that drainage between me and my neighbor.
Well, and you're, Brandy, you're probably right. It's probably a right-of-way defined. So the property lines are where they're shown,
Yep.
but the road doesn't actually exist there.
Okay, so we have 3 sets of twins, basically. Are we leaning towards holding off on that for now?
I think so.
Yeah,
Okay.
doesn't feel right.
Did we get through your 9?
I kind of lumped it in with 7 and 8. They're all kind of the same in my
We pretty
opinion.
much got through your 9.
Okay.
So do we have one that we're gonna kind of?
Well, let's go back and
So the
Review.
one that I think was number 4 was the one that showed,
the city,
I think we were leaning towards the PUD route.
Yep.
And outside of that, number 5 was the one that we thought reaching out to the landowner would be a viable next step. And number 5 is the piece,
I'm sorry, which one was the one you said reach out to the landowner?
so number 5.
Number 5,
Number 5. Okay, got it.
north of the townhomes.
Yep.
I mean, for sure, the first step there, I think, would be reaching out to the landowner and just saying, hey, what's your position on this? Would you have any interest in this, seeing this happen?
Yep, that sounds good.
Does that, if you rezone it, it is potentially an opportunity for them, depending on their position and their ownership intent, you know. Some of the neighbors around them, if they rezone this, some of the neighbors around them might not like it.
Yep.
Given the context, the property that's to the south there was developed, because there is the cul-de-sac
As a PUD.
as a PUD.
Yep.
So that feels like it's already in that area. It feels like that would be a similar aesthetic appeal and similar land use.
I think that number 5, the property owner to the north, I've never, just based on the sense I'm getting from you tonight, is that there may be some careful communication that needs to happen with that particular property owner
I
about
mean,
rezone.
that seems to me like it's a one-on-one conversation. kind
That's
of.
what I was thinking, that
Before you even do anything further is reach out to
have a
that
call.
person, have a phone call.
Yep.
And just say, hey, this is something planning commission is looking at, just, and explaining that the rationale of looking at this even at all
Yep.
has to do with the future land use map.
Okay.
But, and just have a conversation.
Yeah, I think that's the right approach, and I'm happy to make that call.
And I would lean toward respecting that individual's desires pretty significantly. If they said, oh, yeah, that's a great idea, then you start talking to other neighbors around it. So I think that would be the way to approach this one.
Okay.
I recall that there was some opposition to the development that happened to the south there, so, among the neighbors. They liked the fact that it was a big open lot, that it was like a park.
Yeah, sure.
I respect that. That's why I like living next to the cemetery. It's like a park.
Cemeteries are good neighbors.
Really quiet neighbors. Really like that part.
There's still a fence around it and people are still dying to get in.
The one thing I would definitely also let them know is that it wouldn't change their taxes if we were to allow for this development, because, you know, it's not until they sold and developed that their taxes would change. Because I think that's one thing a lot of property owners might not understand, is just because your property is allowed to be developed more intently does not mean we're gonna take a big tax whack off you to,
Oh, yeah. That is meaningful.
Let's go back to Area 1. What did we decide on that? I don't think we did. The Casey Lake one.
Doesn't seem like it's important to do a preemptive strike on that one. I think that's where we landed.
That is.
yeah.
Okay. And then the PUDs that were approved, we were fine leaving those as
Fine
is.
leaving those as is because they were approved as PUDs. And then I think number 4, we
Leave it
I know
alone.
that we concluded, but keeping it as needing a PUD in order to develop is not a bad thing, because it gives the city some clout.
Okay, number 5, call the owner. Number 6,
On 5 still, I know we might have to cross that bridge when we get there, but what are we gonna do if the owner of that property says yes? I think that sounds like a great idea, and I know we've talked a little bit about talking to adjacent landowners.
Yeah.
What if we encounter some opposition among the adjacent, but there's a well of support on that property?
yeah, I think that first get the go-ahead from the actual property owner, then we do our outreach. If we do get a lot of, even if we get a little, you know, negative feedback, have that open conversation with the property owner, and then ultimately it will all be a public hearing at some point. So it's gonna be, everyone will have their chance to have their fair say.
But if you had that property owner's support to proceed with it, then that also gives you an opportunity to speak knowledgeably to the other neighbors and say, we've spoken to this person, and they're very interested in seeing this happen. on the property. Now we're interested in hearing from you,
Right.
kind of a thing.
I'm sorry to go back to this, but we are on this particular property. That next property to the north, 2264, why would we maybe not go ahead and ask them whether they might want to?
That's the one we're talking about.
We are, I'm sorry, I'm
That's the one.
sorry.
Yep.
That's right, so, that's right, you guys had said that 2242 had been redeveloped, right?
Right.
All right,
And that
Sorry about
one,
that.
so what we'd be doing with 2242 is making them conforming. The
I'm sorry, we're
property to
talking
the
about Area
south-
5 still? Yes.
Property to the south that's already been developed as a PUD would then be a conforming to zoning.
It would be double conforming.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so you kind of get it twice.
conforming squared.
Yeah, if you do the whole area as proposed. Good question,
Yeah.
Cameron.
I believe properties number 2 and number 3, the two numbers that you had proposed, grouping number 2, Cardinal Gardens, and number 3 on Margaret. Felt like those, we could go either direction on,
Yeah,
just because they are multi-use or.
they were platted as PUDs, and they don't need to be rezoned because they're already compliant. So it's just really busy work for us.
You don't need more busy work.
Right.
Say, how, are you spending a lot of time sitting there twiddling your thumbs right
Just a little bit, just a little, 5 minutes, that's it.
I think we pretty much concluded that 6, 7, 8, 9 are all
Not so fast.
Yeah.
not, don't move forward with those.
Yep. Perfect. Well, that went a lot faster than I expected. If only I could get the analysis
The
out quicker.
report, I will comment, I think, Jim, I think you said, or no, Andrew, you said, made comments about the quality of the report
Yeah, I would second that.
before the meeting. It's excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent work.
I appreciate that.
It's really, really, I mean, it's concise, it's to the point, the graphics are useful. Everything was just right. That gave us enough information to make an initial decision. I think that's terrific.
Comment about how we burned through this so quickly is exactly to what Patrick was
Yep.
just said. That is what made it go quickly.
This was clutch too, the map, I like that.
Agreed.
I gotta get a bigger map. I can't, it hurts my
I know.
head to look at
I
it.
have one at home that's like 24,
cow.
36.
You
And
know-
at least I can read that one.
It's fine until you start talking about the numbers. I didn't,
Yeah.
they just look like black dots to me.
Yeah, I don't have it up on the wall, but
I
it's
can hold it
rolled
back
up.
here for you.
I have it in case
still
I need
can't
to
see
look
it.
at something.
Okay,
Google Earth is really helpful.
Just have to do it on ledger-size paper next time.
Yeah,
this is ledger size.
this is, yeah. You do it
So
on.
you gotta get the 11, or the
Get the
24 by
large,
36.
large print. Yeah, absolutely.
I just have a couple comments that probably if there were other people in the room, I would get booed for saying this, but that's why I wanted to save it to the end to say it. But the two things. I think typically zoning is not something that is left up to people to decide on their own in a way. I think it's sort of something that should be decided by the people that are trained to do it. And this doesn't apply to all these, but I think, not that we shouldn't be giving people input, but I think there's an overarching vision of North St. Paul that has to be acknowledged, that we shouldn't have individual people necessarily having the power to call out against. If it's already been decided, this is already in the comp plan. So not that, I'm not saying we shouldn't tell anybody anything, it's just, I think there's a limit to traditionally zoning is zoning. It's not something that we can all decide on our own properties what we want to do. So, that's just one point of my opinion. The other thing is specifically for number 5, 5 and 6, I guess, or sorry, 4 and 5. And Brandy, you mentioned this, but I think it's a pretty big thing to say that us kicking the can down the road and saying, well, we'll just have the developer deal with it. It's a really big deal, and it'll kill a deal in a second if somebody says, well, I don't have 6 months, it's going to cost thousands of dollars in my time and in interest rates I'm already paying. And so I would just caution that if we are serious about having any of these look attractive to maybe people that would be coming and wanting to buy them and put some more density on them, that we should take the initiative and actually rezone it ourselves, because that just makes it more attractive, just as you said, Brandy, as one of your comments. So those are the only two things I said, but I think, some of those little, I totally agree with the piecemeal, we don't want to do patchwork, and it's really bizarre how some of these things made it into the comp plan. I'm not really sure where those came from, but.
Since you've made a point about this isn't just individual pieces of property and one
Yep.
person's idea, and bringing it back around to the grander vision of the comp plan, I mean, maybe they were thinking specifically, we are a community that's fully built out, and we do want to provide housing for our citizens, affordable housing options, and maybe these were the most logical lots in which to do that.
Yeah.
The
yeah, I can
analysis
see
wasn't really laid out in the comp plan to give you that, like, direct correlation between the map and the chapter, which would have been helpful, but that could be an answer.
that. Yeah. Yep.
And I think I would agree with you. 4 and 5 are the ones that I think get my attention in that regard.
Yep.
The only reason I suggest the direct contact with the owner on 5 is just because I was part of seeing that development push through, and there were definitely some challenges, and I want to respect that.
Sure. Yeah.
How neighbors feel. But 4, I think there could be a real advantage to rezoning that from a developer standpoint. And that one, I don't think there would be a opposition to.
And I think it's important that whenever we do have these discussions with people, just rezoning does nothing. We're not forcing anybody to do anything they don't want to do. And in a lot of these instances where there's smaller lots, I mean, it's probably 20 years before anything would even potentially happen, because you would probably have to combine some of these lots anyway. Just so that's sort of, the zoning isn't saying your property is R2 now, and you have to deal with that. It's more of a long-term vision of saying, in 20 years, there's probably going to be higher density in this whole area. So, that's, I guess that it makes me a little concerned that, I just don't want us to present this in a way where we're like, ooh, we're going to rezone it. Ooh, it's going to change your whole neighborhood. because it really won't happen. Especially if nobody wants to do anything, nothing's going to happen. It's totally up to the owner's decision. So it's just a way of presenting it, I guess.
And it's an you're creating additional opportunities, basically, by doing the rezone.
Right.
You aren't changing anything except creating opportunity,
Right. Yep.
so. With that, any more discussion on that topic? Brandy, I'm assuming you and your staff will be pushing forward on the additional properties?
Yep, for the next meeting. I'll try to get the rest of them. It may not be all of them. The rest of them are going to be a little difficult because they're all kind of right on top of each other in the downtown, or maybe it'll be easier because of that.
Well, and I think those, I see those as being potentially a different discussion because they are downtown.
Right.
Or close to downtown.
Yeah, I kind of got,
It's an area that feels, just from its essence, as a more dense area of development. So.
and they are all, well, there's a lot of commercial in there in terms of the,
Right.
what are we comparing it to? So having the R1 and R2 in one meeting just made it really easy to get
That's
to
good.
this one.
Brandy, this is not something I'm going to recommend, but I'm just curious. What with Minneapolis and I think St. Paul going over to doing away with or making their R1 zoning more flexible in that they're allowing, multiple family development type things. Have we talked about that up here in North St. Paul? And what would that do if we were to say, that an R1 was no longer simply a single-family dwelling, but could have an auxiliary unit or something like that?
I think we do already have that option in our plan. We do allow accessory dwelling units as conditional use. So I think that option is,
We have one across the street from us.
yeah, and that's pretty,
That's recent.
that's unusual, and I've never worked for a community that has allowed ADUs, so I think that's pretty progressive and part of North St. Paul. So you have that. Another feature of your zoning ordinance is that R2, or R1 allows both single-family and two-family, whereas usually it's not the case. But there's always opportunity to do more. I think the biggest concern, well, here's one thing that I see in just, my interactions with the community over the past year and a half. Your historic plats call for very small lots, like 40 feet wide.
I was just thinking about that as you were talking about that.
And we had one, the student-built house that's going up right now, it was a lot split that was, it could have been 3 had we allowed it, just because it was, historically, it was a 3 lots.
Is that the one off of Eldridge?
Yeah, no, I would be more concerned about the type of dwelling allowed to go in a lot split as opposed to allowing lot splits. And that's simply because of my own particular circumstance where I have a single-family bungalow, or single-level bungalow, and they built a 2-story monstrosity next to me when the earlier owners split the lot. And it's so darn close that their kitchen window can look in my kitchen window very easily.
Oh, yeah.
But, that was something that was allowed 20 years ago, and hopefully it wouldn't be allowed now, because the house that was built there is certainly not in character with the neighborhood beside it.
I think in terms of redeveloping the community, as those opportunities happen, the primary thing that we need to think about is drainage and creating, retaining the open space so that we have that adequate stormwater drainage.
That was a big deal on the student-built home
Oh, yeah.
area too, because that's, it's already a flooding issue there.
Well, I will stop sharing my screen.
Well, I think we're up to agenda item 8, which is reports. Let's start with Councilmember Nordby.
I have
I have nothing to report other than the fact that the city council's and eagerly anticipating the conclusion of this report.
Good to know. Commissioner Muick?
Nothing to share at this time.
Commissioner Brennan?
I have nothing further.
Start with,
Nothing further.
and Commissioner Wise.
I think we should make sure we all get out to the garage sale this weekend.
Oh, yeah. In
And
fact, I saw 2 locations going on as I was driving here.
yeah, that's right. It started today already, right? Yeah.
Oh,
Lot-
don't forget, that the city is having the cleanup next weekend.
I
That's
was
right.
in fact going to mention that. That's part of my report. But thank you anyway.
I'm
Stole
stepping
it.
all over your report.
No, it is, in fact. Anything else?
No, that was it.
Can I give a report too?
Pardon?
Can I give an update too?
No. Go ahead, Brandy.
Okay. One of the things that city council acted on last meeting 2 days ago was a right-of-way encroachment agreement for the old Subway site, which then was Brothers Bistro and
Yes.
is now going to be the Blue Nile Restaurant. This is a funny situation where we had a parking lot that was paved into the Zeppela right-of-way at the city's direction. I'm not entirely sure why we asked for that to happen and why it was never recorded against the property. But we asked for that because the parking for the restaurant, based on the expanded footprint of the restaurant within the building, the zoning ordinance parking requirement triggered some additional need for parking. So that was our solution. This is going to continue to be an issue moving forward as we get new occupants in the downtown and our older buildings, that don't have any space on the land at all. They can't provide parking. And I think we need to act on that sooner than later.
Agreed.
Yeah, I was actually kind of surprised about that, because you've got that bank parking lot directly across the street, and it's hardly ever full. So I wondered right along why Brothers Restaurant couldn't, and even when they were really busy, it flowed over in there anyway. So I was always kind of a little curious as to why that Sepulveda was cut off back there, when it didn't really seem like it was necessary unless you were looking at it solely from the standpoint of that particular lot.
I did suggest a shared parking agreement with the owner of the restaurant and the bank, and they did get into conversations with that, about that, and they were going down the path before we got the agreement done, so I don't think they're doing that anymore, but we talked to the bank, Robert Dew on the EDA, and I had a conversation with him yesterday, just kind of to explain what the redevelopment master plan vision is, just to give them an update on what that is, and we also talked about shared parking opportunities, so they are aware that there is a need potentially, and they may be interested down the road.
Good to know.
I think that is, all that I have to report right now.
And my only item I was going to mention is exactly what Cameron mentioned, which is cleanup day, the 13th. Saturday the
13th, I think it's from 8 to noon.
That's what I think too. I'm not sure of the time. I think it's just morning.
Yeah, maybe it's 8 to 11. It's, okay.
It's a really good opportunity. I mean, I'm really glad the city does that. And
Well,
when we've been there in the past, there's been a regular flow,
Yeah.
even in the rain.
Public Works has wrote me into being there, so I'll be there. I'll be looking for all of you.
I've already rented a U-Haul truck so I can get all sorts of stuff out of my place.
So you have to explain to me what cleanup day.
When you have things that don't fit in your trash can, but you
Don't
want to
feel
get
like
rid of
paying
them,
to take 'em
and you haven't given them away on Buy Nothing Group or sold them on Facebook Marketplace.
Yeah.
which we were talking about
Yeah.
earlier, and you just really need to get rid of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, they'll take tires and mattresses and
Where?
Right here at the.
over at
Public
the
Works
Public
facility.
Works building.
Serious?
One day.
Go to the city's website. It's
One morning.
it's
I
under the
never
news.
knew about this.
Well, you gotta get on the mailing list for the newsletter, and you'll get it.
Last year was the first year, right?
No,
Or has it always been?
I think it's
they've done
been,
it for at least 2 or 3
Oh,
years in
okay,
a row now.
okay,
They started it when they got rid of the bulk pickup.
okay, that's right.
yeah. Right.
So, that's interesting. So that when I used to live in the city in Illinois called Cary, small community, not a whole lot different than us. What they did the same thing. The only difference is that they would, you could put your stuff out starting on a given day of that week. And what it did is it allowed people to kind of go through and pick up what they wanted type of a scenario. And it reduced the amount of rubbish that actually the city had to deal with. And so anything that had to do with metal, the junk guys would just come
Yeah.
cruising through and,
Yeah.
they're loading them all up because they're going to town and gonna take what they can by weight. And the bicycle guys would do their thing and, but cabinets would all of a sudden disappear. Could be like, oh yeah, I'll put that in. College students,
I've heard they do that in Fargo, and it's like, people look forward to that weekend.
Yeah.
Everybody brings all their junk to the curb, and you just drive around picking up new junk. Yeah, I heard it's awesome.
it's a good time.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
is usually a week after the citywide garage sale. Actually, that's something I really wouldn't mind seeing us do twice a year, like, late spring and just before winter, so that, because, so many people do projects during the summertime.
Yeah.
And you wind up with all this stuff that sits in your yard until after the snow is gone.
My perception is it's a big effort on the city's part.
Yeah, it is.
All the sorted dumpsters and, yeah.
What's your job on the Saturday morning? What's your job that,
Well, I have no idea.
okay.
Just gonna show up and eat a
Guide
donut.
cars. Well, with the,
Throwing sofas in the dumpster?
pay attention to the fact that when you go, and we all will,
What's the day?
13th.
Saturday the 13th.
The day before Mother's Day, I guess we didn't
Day before
plan
Mother's
that
Day.
out too well.
But
So
pay attention
don't
to
drop
the
your
fact,
mother-in-law off.
pay attention to the fact that portions, there are roads that are closed downtown. So the access route to get into cleanup day, you have to do it a certain way.
You come in,
Come in
It's
from
wonky.
the west on the road, the frontage road adjacent 36.
North St. Paul Drive, yep. And then you
So
exit on.
kind of start at Quick Trip, you know.
It is on the website, so go, like, it's on the, scroll down to the bottom of the page, it's one of the boxes. And then there's a map to how to get around. And it has a list of all of the items that we will accept and won't accept.
And to educate all of your neighbors.
And there's not much you won't accept. I think it's like.
Yeah, it's really good.
It's,
We're not gonna take railroad ties.
yeah, non-hazardous.
But hazardous materials, you can drop off at hazardous material site over, that the county does, so.
Says hazardous waste, including paint or batteries, not accepted. Okay.
But they'll take electronics this year. That's
Yeah,
a
that
big
was-
deal for people sometimes. Say
They haven't done that before?
computer Or something like that. I don't think they
Remember
did that
they did
last
it
year.
last year.
And tires, that's a good thing to be able to get rid
Yeah.
of.
With rims removed.
Oh,
They'll take rims and tires, but not.
okay, there
You
you go.
gotta separate them.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm just glad they're gonna take appliances, because I have a refrigerator I need to get rid of. It's dead. But it's like a 22-year-old refrigerator, so it's probably not worth trying to bring back to life.
Yeah, good to know. Sometimes they're the best ones. All right. Is someone prepared to make a motion for adjournment since we're just beating a dead horse now?
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Rothy, a second?
Second.
Second by Muick. All in favor?
Aye.
7:48.
Gentlemen, I have another meeting to get to, so